Welcome to Ordinary People Podcast, where we talk to ordinary people with extraordinary stories. I'm your host, Alan the Great. In today's episode, we're going to take off from the previous episode. The previous episode is where we talked about our children's right to live. After that episode, a lot of conversation was generated. There was questions to me about me going and elaborating more on some of the things that I talked about in the previous episode. I got approached by people who wanted to debate about some of the issues and comments I made in the previous episode. And I also had a gentleman talk to me about wanting to discuss some of the things that was missed in the previous episode and that needed to be discussed. So with that being said, after listening to all the feedback, and I appreciate you, my listeners' feedback on the episode, and I encourage you to continue to give me your feedback on what would you like to see on the podcast. Now, after receiving and going over all the feedback, we decided to do 3 more parts of the Our Children's Right to Live episode of the podcast. So on this extraordinary opinion segment, I asked the co-host to come join me. I asked Mr. Andre Ryder to come join me on the podcast to help me discuss some of the issues that needed to be discussed on the podcast, which was not discussed on the Our Children's Right to Live episode. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Andre Ryder. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Alan?
I'm doing good. And Mr. Ryder, I call him Pop, by the way. He's Andre Ryder to everybody else. I call him Pop. But when I seen you last, I got out the car and you immediately said to me, we need to talk about your last episode.
Right.
And one of the things you said was we need to talk about some of the things that I didn't discuss in the podcast, and that you felt there were some things missing in the podcast that wasn't mentioned that, excuse me, needed to be talked about. So I invited you on this episode, to discuss some of the things that you felt that was very important that needed to be discussed. So without further ado, I want to give the floor to you to open up to what would you like to hear discussed, and we can have a conversation about it.
Okay. One of the things was gentrification.
Okay.
And for those who do not know what gentrification means, it means the process of renovating and improving a house or district to conform to the middle class. Now, gentrification is happening in a lot of communities that are crime areas.
Yes, yes.
You'll see these signs that say, we buy homes for cash. And what happens is you get these landlords who come in and they make the improvements on the houses,
Mm-hmm.
but it does not be affordable. It's just not affordable to most people who are supposed to be the middle class. And what I mean by this is we are the lower class at this point.
Right.
I believe statistically that Latino folks are buying more homes than African American people.
Right.
This is just my opinion.
Right. This is the extraordinary opinion segment. So yes.
With all the crime and everything that's going on within these communities, man, and folks not really having affordable housing, astronomical, they're paying astronomical amounts for their rent or whatever.
Right.
I just think that these landlords are really just holding out so that a certain class of people could pretty much move back into this city.
Right.
Now, if you look around this city, you'll see where we have lots of construction going on. And I truly believe that it's not for African American people, you know. So what happens is you get African American people who do well for themselves, who in turn move out into the suburbs, so to speak, from Bear to Middletown or whatever.
Right.
And then you have folks who got to drive from Bear, Middletown just to come in town to work or whatever. And it's real stressful on them doing that.
Right.
Takes them a long time to get to work,
Right.
and it takes them a long time, probably even longer, just to get home. So basically, they doing all this building. To me, is for the white community, man. It's not for blacks. When you look and you see condominiums coming up on Orange Street, it ain't gonna be affordable for no African American. And I'm not saying people don't have the right to buy whatever they can afford.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you leaving folks behind. So basically, what you want is to move out all the crime and all the folks, because we talked about the fact that the police aren't really policing our streets. It's already in the plan.
Okay.
You're going to have those upper class people move back in with their dollars.
Right.
And move the lower class people out.
Right.
And that's all a part of gentrification.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to respond with a few questions about what you just spoke about, gentrification. Excuse me. First question I had to ask you is, first before I start getting my questions, let me elaborate. We're discussing Wilmington, Delaware right now. For y'all who are listening, who are not familiar with Wilmington, Delaware, this is where the podcast is taking place right now. This is the subject of the podcast is Wilmington, Delaware. However, gentrification is happening to other states, such as Brooklyn, New York, which a lot of gentrification is happening in Queens, a lot of urban neighborhoods. Philadelphia is dealing with a lot of gentrification. Just to name a few cities, or what should I say, urban cities that are experiencing gentrification right now. However, just for clarification, we are speaking directly about Wilmington, Delaware right now, as far as gentrification and changes in construction that's happening. So with that being said, I want to get to the question. Question one I have for you in regards to this subject. You mentioned the crime in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, Wilmington, Delaware has a nickname right now. It's called Murder Town, USA. It doesn't seem as if the crime is letting up in Wilmington. In fact, it's getting worse. And for people I discuss who are probably the target audience to buy these new condominiums, these new houses that's being put up in Wilmington, the new gentrification, who are basically, this is being done for, they're fearful of the crime in Wilmington, Delaware. They're fearful to drive through Wilmington, Delaware. They feel like they feel like the crime rate is not really equaling up to the gentrification and making them feel safe to live in that neighborhood. So I guess my question to you is, do you feel like that with the gentrification that they're trying to clean up the neighborhood as far as crime to make it safer for people, higher class people to live in the neighborhoods?
It's a part of it. It's a part of it. It's pretty much already in the plans to do just that. So I believe if you are a person who live in these neighborhoods that this is happening, I believe that you should, if you own your home, you have the right to decide to sell your home if that's what you want to do. But if I was you, I will wait as long as I possibly could so that you can get the right money.
Right.
Because then these developers come in and, they start building these homes or condos, and they make it's not affordable.
Why do you think gentrification is on a rise in Wilmington, Delaware? Like, why do you think they're trying to push the African American or the poorer communities out of Wilmington?
It goes right back to the crime, man. It goes back to the crime, and it goes back to my point of that I was making about the fact that you have folks that live out in these suburban areas, but they work in the city, and they have to take these long rides back and forth every day, just to get to work and get home from work.
Right.
Congestion on our highways, all of that, plays a part in it. But if you truly look around, look at the waterfront. How many black folks live down in the waterfront? How many black folks live on A Market and A Street, where those condominiums are?
Right.
Now if you make enough money where you can move into these areas, I'm not saying that you don't have that right. You have that right, but you still gotta make the playing field a lot uh, um,
Equal playing field.
yeah, you got to make it equal.
Right.
You got to make the playing field equal.
Right.
You know, thank you, man.
No,
Thank
no
you. I
problem.
drew a
No
blank.
problem. You can ask me questions. You can ask me questions as well as I'm going to give my opinion on gentrification and what's going on in Wilmington. Gentrification for me. See, when we had the conversation, one of the things I said to you was with this. It's interesting that people were upset about outside people coming into Wilmington in these urban neighborhoods and seeing the value in those neighborhoods and investing in it. And the comparison I had with that was you have a wife and you don't treat her with respect and you don't treat her as you should. Then she leaves you, you leave her, and she finds another man that treats her like she should be. You know what I mean?
Right.
Understand her worth. Are you to be mad at that person for understanding that worth and to treating her like she is? And this is what I mean about the city. It's like, how much are we investing into our own city? How much are we trying to build up our city and seeing the same value that these outside entities are seeing in the riverfront area, in the Wilmington area, in these urban areas? They see the value and they're coming in there, capitalize on it. And I have to ask people, okay, so why aren't we capitalizing on this?
Well, great point.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent point. You made a very good point. But I think that when it comes to crime, and that's probably one of the biggest, that is the most biggest thing, education and crime.
Yes.
What folks got to do is stop being fearful to come from out of their homes and start taking back their city.
Absolutely.
Taking their blocks back, taking their community back.
Absolutely.
And the only way it's going to be done, push that bad seed away from where you live. But you got to be visual.
Right.
You know what I mean? They have to see you. They have to see that you are not afraid to sit on your porch or whatever. And then the other thing is, I mean, we got to start telling when these bad things happen.
Absolutely.
And not live in fear of what somebody's going to do to you.
Right.
You know?
This seemed to be a conversation I had with somebody after the last podcast, the Our Children Right to Live podcast, where a woman that lives in the urban neighborhood said, you know, I wanted to speak out, but I'm afraid to speak to someone's children because I'm afraid of the retaliation that might come. My response being, I never thought I'd see the day where the children become fearful, the parents become fearful of their children. And in the previous podcast, I used my grandmother and I used my mom as an example. I said, you know, my mom, all she had to do was look at me and my sister, and the fear of God was in us.
Right.
Not putting her hands on us, but just a look. Where my grandmom, she used to do another sort. She was old school, so she used to whoop her behinds, but it wasn't out of abuse, which people get accused of now. It was out of teaching us discipline, teaching us to respect our elders and respect others. And because of my mother and my grandmother, I have respect for not only my elders, but other people, regardless of age, gender, race. Right. I have a certain respect, no matter of class. I have respect for people. And I feel like that's something lacking when we look at the inner cities right now. More parents are afraid of their children. They're very afraid to correct their children. And the old saying used to be, it takes a village to raise the children, but I don't see any villages. In fact, the villages are starting to being torn down, as you said, with gentrification, and new villages are being built for higher class people who appreciates the beauty of the urban neighborhoods, appreciate the value in the urban neighborhoods. And I feel like we need to take back not only our streets, but take back our neighborhoods and understand and see the beauty of our neighborhood rather than trying to tear it down. With that being said, we also need to find value in other things besides cars, sneakers, and jewelry.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I know I had a conversation with you because with all transparency, as you know, I have a large sneaker collection.
Yes, you do, son.
And I said to you, the conversation I said to you, I said, you know, it was a Facebook post I seen that kind of changed my view on that. This is all going to be tied back, listeners, if you're wondering, are we going off subject? It goes back to gentrification. It goes back to us taking our neighborhood and finding value in things. Where I found value in sneakers. There was a post where they had Bill Gates' what's his name? Basically, Warren Buffett. I'm sorry, Warren Buffett. I drew a blank there, and a bunch of other billionaires laughing and joking, saying these people think success. They can measure success by sneakers and jewelry, and the image of them laughing at that felt like they were mocking me personally.
Mm-hmm.
It made me reassess what did I find value in, and how I draw us back into gentrification in our neighborhoods. It's where are we finding value in our neighborhoods? Why outside entities are coming in the neighborhood and they're seeing value in the riverfront area, in these urban neighborhoods. We're finding value in sneakers and jewelry. You know, we're finding value in being our children's best friend rather than being our parents. Now, with that being said, I want to go into another thing. I know we have a lot to discuss, so I don't want to get hung up, but I want to ask you one more question. You said something about education. We're having a lot of conversations about education, and as a parent, I have to agree with you that education is very terrible in middle-class neighborhoods. And the fact, if a middle-class person, which we are now considered the lower class, cannot afford private schools, then your children are at risk of not learning, and they're being forced to learn lessons for a test. How much do you feel that lack of education is playing a role in all the things that's happening in Wilmington and all the things that's happening with our youth?
I just think, I mean, in this system that we're in, a lot of it which you really don't use when you do step into the workforce or whatever, a lot of the problems are they don't teach you about finances.
Absolutely.
They don't tell the truth, period, when it comes to the education that we are learning in our schools.
Right.
They don't tell you, for me, they don't give you, I think when you talk about the contributions that African American people has made in this country, we get a month of
Black History Month.
Black history.
Right.
You know, when it should be a part of regular curriculum, but let the truth be told. And I say this because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was George Washington Carver.
Right.
Right. Most people I grew up with in elementary school, when Black History Month came around, we discussed stuff about Martin Luther King, all the norms.
Right.
But I just want to make this point about George Washington Carver.
Okay.
George Washington Carver was adopted by a white family in Illinois.
Okay.
Could be wrong about the actual state.
That's fine. Yeah.
But he was adopted by a white family. And what that white family done to him was they put him through a very good school. He was friends with Ford, who made the Ford Motor Company.
Right.
Very close friends with him.
Okay.
But what they also done to him, which they do not teach you in the curriculum because the whole truth is never told.
Right.
They castrated him. They castrated him so that he would not sleep with their daughter.
Okay.
He went to the finest of schools.
Right.
We can't talk about that. We can't complain about that.
Right.
But as he got older, after he got out of college and things of that nature, after he developed all the wonderful things like hair grease, things of that nature for us,
Right.
one of the things that he would rather you do was call him gay than him actually telling you the truth about what happened to him.
Okay.
Not only that, a lot of his ideas Ford.
Right.
But they don't tell you this because the whole truth when it comes to our people is never told.
Right. Interesting that you say that. I was speaking to an older gentleman that fought in the Vietnam War, and he's actually a teacher that teaches American history as well as military history and geography at a university. And one of the things he said about history is history rarely tells you the truth. It's made to fantasize and not fantasize, but glamorize certain stories to make them sound more appealing to people who are actually listening to them. With that being said, when we talk about George Washington Carver and what happened to him, it's interesting that you talk about him going to a finer school and being able to create the hair grease, help Ford out with building the car and all the great things he's done. And it goes back to a point I think I previously touched on and you previously touched on was schooling and how important education is to our youth. So I think what you just taught the youth and the listeners who are listening to this, that the importance of education and what factor that will have on you reaching a higher level of success and opening doors to you to other opportunities. Now, with that being said, a question I have to ask you is, because we're talking a lot about race here, how much do you think a lot of the issues with recently are dealing with race rather than money? Do you think it's more about money with people and not racism, or is it more about racism and not money? Because my point is, and I've been saying to people that I don't think racism is a big factor anymore. And before everybody jumps out the window and starts screaming to the hills, just hear me out. What I'm about to say is, I feel like racism is being pushed in our face and being pushed into society to make black versus white versus Latino, Asian versus black. And we're all fighting over racism, why the people who are on top that really controls the country, controls the world, are more concerned about green.
Puppeteers.
Exactly. And it seems like while we're busy fighting each other, we're not realizing we're all in the same foxhole.
Right.
Where when you talk about gentrification does affect the white people who are living in these urban neighborhoods as well, but see, they get kind of like unrepresented in this situation because of this assumption of white privilege. So when my question is to you, how much do you think a lot of this with gentrification and the issues we're facing has to do with money rather than race?
I think it has a lot to do with money than race. I have to agree with you on that. Because black folks are killing black folks.
Absolutely.
Young black kids. Now it's the young black kids, man, killing each other.
Right.
They ain't doing that. But for those, and I don't, believe me, I don't want anyone to think that I'm racist, because I'm not.
No, I understand.
But I believe for those who are racist, they sitting back, man, saying, let them kill themselves.
Right.
I mean, we can go back as far as the whole drug situation.
Right.
We don't have planes. We don't have boats. We don't have none of those things.
Right.
You know what I mean? We barely got the jobs at these airports that would allow some of this stuff to actually come into, you know, our country and things, you know, but yet that stuff gets dropped right off into the black neighborhood.
That's an interesting point. I want to segue to the drug situation. Before we go there, I want to say something about that. Des Bryant, I don't know if you heard this. Des Bryant, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, got into a heated argument. I'll let you know what's going on, because I see you looking at me like, okay, what are you talking about here?
Right.
And what this has to do with what you just said. Des Bryant was talking about us taking responsibility as a race, taking responsibilities for our actions and how we move forward and change some of the things we're dealing with. How much responsibility do you feel we need to take in what's happening with the drug epidemic and has happened? Because despite them bringing the drugs in, and we know that through the Iran-Contra and the government, it's been proven that drugs were brought in through the government and not actual African-American or through the people who live in the urban city. How much do you think we have to take responsibility in our choice to sell and use drugs?
Oh, we got to take all the responsibility as far as that. I mean, you got to, it starts at home, man. The whole educational thing starts at home. It's the things that we instill in our children, the good things. It is the things that we tell them about that are bad, that's going on in the world. So we have to educate our children and somehow make a way for them so that they don't have to choose to sell drugs, just to buy those sneakers or whatever. But I blame the media. I blame a lot of these companies that make these clothes and these shoes and things of that nature. And it's almost like they sell clothes for a thinner person than a person that is a little heavier. You know what I mean? And they focus on that. This is how you should look or whatever. And that's just not so. That's just not so. So I truly believe that we do. I agree with him. We have to take responsibility, man. It's going to start there. The only way we're going to get our neighborhoods back, we have to take responsibility for that.
No, I absolutely agree. We're dealing with a deeper epidemic right now with the drug opiums, the Percocets, the Vicodins, where they're taking over crack, and it's a new war on drugs now. And the difference between crack and these opiums is if you get into an accident or if you go to the dentist and you get a tooth pulled, the doctors are the ones subscribing you these pills where you're getting addicted to. So it's kind of like it's no longer a choice whether you want to do drugs or you're doing drugs by choice or peer pressure, but more out of necessity to deal with an injury. And the drugs are not being pushed on a corner no more, but they're actually being pushed out of a pharmacy or out of a doctor's office. And it's causing an issue that, once again, our neighborhoods and affecting the urban neighborhoods, but now are leaking outside urban neighborhoods to the more upper class neighborhoods. With that being said, how do we fight back? And you, as a person who's on the front lines of this drug epidemic and fighting to save lives and to get people off these drugs and trying to reverse your distributing and training on how to use a overdose drug, how do we fight back against that? Fight back against, now that we have this new war on drugs, how do we fight back and get our children back and fight and get our communities back who are plagued by this new war on drugs?
Well, as far as the opiates, I agree with you that a lot of the doctors and these pharmaceutical companies, they are the biggest drug dealers out here. But you got to understand, it's about the almighty dollar. It's about something that you can actually, something that can be taxed.
Right.
Excuse me. So with illicit drugs, you can't tax them.
You see, this thing I had a conversation with somebody about this recently, and they're trying to tell me that, that the government wants heroin to still be distributed on the streets. I'm like, well, why would the government want heroin to be distributed on the streets when they can't record profits from that? When you are dealing with opiums and you're dealing with prescription drugs, it's easier to justify selling that drug rather than heroin. You see what I'm saying? So to me, that didn't make sense. I don't think the person I was speaking to understood and understands how this is working and how the financial system works with drugs. See, a government no one can count selling heroin on a corner on their taxes. You can't put that on a spreadsheet and justify that to the American people or even to business owners
You're talking about
or to
doctors.
the IRS. Exactly. So it's like I said, it's a different war on drugs, but our neighborhoods are deeply affected by it. You go to the neighborhoods and there's zombies. These kids are stealing cars. They're the new crackheads, as you say now. And it's a really sad thing, but we go back to this whole subject of our children's rights to live. And the question I'm asking is, what can we do to take back our neighborhoods from these drugs? And what do us as parents need to do? Is it more of educating our children? Is it more of us saying no when we're subscribed to these drugs and we need to be subscribed to something that doesn't make us addicted? What do we need to do as people to stop this epidemic with the opiums and these drugs?
That hits home with me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Although my thing wasn't prescription drugs.
Mm-hmm.
My thing was first crack, then heroin. And by me doing heroin, it went to a whole nother level for me as far as losing my self-respect,
right.
Losing my children.
Mm-hmm.
I even lost my wife at one point.
Right.
So it hits home with me, and it's about educating. Now, I can tell you one thing about someone who is dealing with an addiction.
Right.
They are not going to be done using until they're ready.
Right.
So we have to make it where we can make things safe for them.
Right.
If you are an intravenous drug user, for instance, and you can crush pills like Dilaudidines and Percs and actually shoot them.
Right.
So if you are an intravenous drug user, then what you want to do is make sure that these people uh, are able to get clean equipment
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't have to use other people's equipment or just dirty equipment altogether.
Right, which spreads AIDS and other diseases.
It's all about harm reduction. So it's a bigger
Right.
picture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because if you could stop that, you are actually and we're making some headway as far as when we talking about Hep C and HIV.
Right.
So I truly believe that if you're a person that was injured, you was an athlete or whatever, and we have professional athletes that probably deal with this every day, from football to basketball to hockey, maybe even to baseball.
Right.
These doctors give you these drugs. If you was a person that was in a car accident or whatever, and pretty much all you got to do is just ask for them.
Right.
It's a business.
It is. It's a business, but I kind of go back to my previous point of taking responsibility for our actions. And though I feel like the government and drug makers are selling these drugs and they're promoting these drugs out for people to take, and they're giving something for you to get addicted to, and you know the chances and the rates that people are getting addicted to this. I, however, still believe that there still need to be a sense of responsibility. We need to have accountability for people, especially parents, to educate their children, educate themselves on what this is going to do, and figure out other solutions and other ways where you're not being affected or being forced to be addicted to a drug that you don't want, is going to cause harm to you and harm to your family, because it goes deeper than you just stealing from your family or robbing someone, but also dealing with kidney failure and other things that you can more speak to when you're taking these drugs in large quantities. Because when you're doing this, you're not realizing these drugs have a limit of how many you can take and how much you should take and how long. If you're taking these drugs for months or years, you're going well beyond that limit that's set on you, and you're putting your body organs at risk.
But that's addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, early on, I don't think the laws have changed.
Mm-hmm.
But at one point, I don't think that the doctors who prescribed this medication was actually telling their patients
Mm-hmm. just
how addictive these medications were.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, since the laws have changed, I'm almost certain when you look on the bottle, it pretty much tells you, and I'm not saying it didn't in the beginning, but it's pretty much up to those doctors just to let these people know how bad those opiates like Perks and Vicodin, things of that nature, Tramadol, those pills, just how bad just how addictive they are.
Mm-hmm.
Since the laws have changed, it has made it a little better, but you still have people who get a prescription from their doctor and go out in the street and actually sell the prescription for astronomical amount of money.
Right.
You have doctors that give people prescription for 90 Perk 10s or Oxy 10s, and they go right out and they make $1,100-$1,200, if not more, off of those pills. Only to go and buy another drug. Or maybe pay a few bills or something like that. But that's the state of it all. As for heroin, it is killing our people, man. I work in a field where I actually see it almost every day, where you hear about someone dying. I see it every day. It is killing people. And the thing about being addicted to heroin, you can go to jail on a Monday. On a Friday. Get out on a Monday. Now, say you are used to doing 5 or 6 bags to a bundle.
Right.
You go to jail and you have that small time where you are abstinent from using that particular drug.
Mm-hmm.
and you come out and you try to use the same amount,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll take you away from here. So it goes back to educating these people
Mm-hmm.
about how these drugs actually affect you.
Mm-hmm. Now, we talked about school earlier and how important education is, and how important we talked about George Washington Carver, how important education was to him in his career, and his ability to create things such as hair grease, help out Ford make the car brand that's so famous and so popular today. How important do you think? Do you think the discussion of drugs and the dangers of drugs should be discussed in schools? Should that be a conversation in schools, or should that be a conversation that's mainly focused at home?
Once again, I truly believe that the education part starts at home,
Mm-hmm.
but it should be curriculum in
Mm-hmm.
schools. Because, I mean, if you look, man, you know, you got young people, 11, 12, 13 years old,
Mm-hmm.
that shoot drugs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and it's even bigger than the actual drugs, because it's something traumatic or whatever has happened in a person's life to cause them. Maybe not all people, because for me, I like getting high.
Right.
Nobody done anything to me.
Right.
Once I tried the drug, I loved the drug.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of people, they got to deal with rape.
Mm-hmm.
They got to deal with being beat on by their spouse,
Mm.
you know, or a parent,
Right.
you know, abused.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that trauma starts somewhere, and then people go out and look for love in a whole different, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
in other areas.
Right.
And before you know it, you got all these young people, man, that are all messed up on drugs. And not only that, you have the parents of these people who probably are drug abusers themselves.
Right.
You know what I mean? Who, in some instances, turn their kid on to that drug.
Right.
You know? And now you got generations of people, which a lot of times you see within the inner city.
Yeah.
I know we also talked about, and I'm not trying to go off topic, we also talked about how these children today know their parents' business.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that. Yeah. We talked about how the children know if a parent is struggling, or how much they're paying on their bills, or what bills are behind, which was not a conversation for me when I was a kid.
Wasn't a conversation for me.
Wasn't for you either. When I talked to you, one of the things I said was I could see when my mom was having problems, and she was a single mother for majority of my life. However, it wasn't a conversation that we had, and it wasn't something that she talked to me about or tried to force me out to, you know, to sell drugs or do anything to get money to assist her with the bills. With that being said, we also have an issue. I want to segue to something else, because you said trauma. You used the word trauma. You said some of the things that people have to deal with drug abuse is they come from trauma, whether it's rape, abuse from a spouse, abuse from a parent. How much of a mental disorder do you how much do you believe that mental disorder plays a factor into what's going on in the community with the killings of each other and the drug use? How much do you think mental disorder plays a part? Do you think that's a factor? And what I mean by mental disorder, one of the things is, I studied this, it's something that Army vets deal with. It's trauma from experiencing war.
Post-traumatic
stress, yes. Post-traumatic stress, where people in the community might deal with their parents getting high, and post-traumatic stress that deal with the shootings that's going on, and it becomes second nature to them. They become numb to it. So what I'm asking you is, how much do you feel like the idea of experiencing and seeing these things become as second nature to these people, and easier for them in their mind to justify their actions?
Eventually it ends up like that, because with having a parent that, first of all, abused you, probably turned you on to drugs, or a family member,
right?
It has to do with you seeing all of that,
right?
Experiencing all of that. So not only that, it's poverty, being hungry, not having, being teased about the clothes that you're wearing from your peers.
Right.
It's so much that play into it, to the point wherein that kid or those kids are forced to go out. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but it's about survival for a lot of kids.
Right.
You know, so I believe it starts like that. Then sometimes it's all about the family business.
Right.
It's okay for me to sell your family drugs.
But it's not okay for you to sell mine.
Yeah, you know what I
Exactly.
mean? My family better not touch no drugs, but it's okay for me to sell your family drugs and destroy your family.
And with that being said, it's an issue that we're going to bring up, and we're going to do a whole nother segment on support. It makes me think about support and supporting one another. And when we talk about gentrification and we talk about support and we talk about the idea of it's okay for me to sell your family drugs, but it's not okay for you to do the same to me. With gentrification, what do you feel needs to be done in regards to gentrification? Do you feel like there needs to be a change? Gentrification needs to be something that's stopped? Do you feel like gentrification is something we need to accept as a community and work to strive to live up to the standards with the community? What do you feel with gentrification? And okay,
the biggest thing with gentrification for me is that once again the playing field needs to be equal.
Okay.
Because I truly believe what makes Wilmington great, what makes any urban area great is the melting pot of people that you have within these communities, man. I didn't come on here just to talk to make it seem as if it was all about race, because it's not.
No.
As African Americans, we need to hold ourselves accountable for the things that are going on within our community.
Right.
We need to step up and come out of our homes and stop being fearful of the things that's going on right out in front of our homes.
Absolutely.
We all need to come out and step out and take responsibility for that. And those bad seeds that we have within that community need to be weeded out.
Absolutely. And what I want to say is, I want to step in and say this, and Mr. Ryder is absolutely right what he's trying to tell you. We're not on here trying to create separation, and that's not what the podcast is about, is create separation, but we are addressing the issue. And when you think about these urban neighborhoods where all the killing is going on, where all the change is going on, where all the bulk of the drug activity is going on, it is affecting the African American community. And this is the reason Mr. Ryder is speaking how he's speaking, and what he's discussing, he is focusing on the problem areas. So I want to clarify that he is not speaking to come across as a racist person, or to say that that's his only care or focus. However, the focus of his conversation is on problem areas, which are majority made up of poor African Americans. So for those who are listening, like I said, we're not trying to make this a race thing, but we're trying to address a problem that's facing a majority of an African American community and society that are made up of poor African Americans. Now, with the idea of, is there white and Latino and Asian poor people in these neighborhoods? Absolutely, but they make up a minority population of these places that we're speaking on. So we wanted to clarify that in what we're discussing here and why we're discussing this. We're also looking for, or trying to come to, a solution to these problems that we're facing in these communities. Mr. Ryder has boots to the ground. That's one of the reasons why I wanted him on here. You work in these communities. You work with these people. You're working to help reverse the drug activity. And you yourself were a person who participated in the drug activity. And as you made clear, it was by your personal choice, but it's something you also made a choice to change.
Absolutely.
So Mr. Ryder's perspective on this subject is very important to anyone listening, whether you have a child that's dealing with drug addiction, a mother, or a family member or a friend. The perspective that Mr. Ryder is giving you is from a perspective that I could never speak on, because I never had an issue with drugs. So I think it's very important that you listen to what this man has to say and take it very seriously. Now, Mr. Ryder, you have other points that you wanted to touch on, and as we keep the eye on the clock, what are some of the other points that you wanted to discuss in this episode?
This is about awareness.
Okay.
This is about awareness. I have to stress again that I'm merely making a point.
Okay.
And it's a valid point.
Absolutely.
What I want to talk about is solicitation, soliciting that is going on in our communities. And what I mean is, and I'm gonna start this one. I'm gonna start it out like this.
First,
If I was an
explain to people what is solicitation, just so they know exactly what you mean by solicitation. What is solicitation?
Well, it's when a person is standing on a corner. I'm not going to say begging, but asking something for something from another person.
Right.
Or the selling of things
Mm-hmm.
in areas that should not be sold.
Okay.
That's my definition.
No, that's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's a great definition.
The point I'm trying to make, if I was an African American man
Mm-hmm.
and I walk through a white community,
Mm-hmm.
predominantly white community,
Right.
and I am standing on a corner. Now, once again, we have people that need help.
Absolutely.
But if you were in that white community and you were African American and you stood on a corner in that white community with a sign saying that, okay, I'm homeless, understandable,
Mm-hmm.
love you,
Mm-hmm.
but the police will be called on you.
Absolutely.
And they're coming very quickly.
Okay.
You go around town here in Wilmington, it's almost like it's accepted.
Right.
It's okay to do, and I think something needs to be done about that.
Absolutely. I want to speak on that, and I agree with you that that is a major issue. I don't see it in the neighborhood I live in more of a suburban area, not in city area, where we don't see a lot of solicitation. However, when I do visit Wilmington, you're absolutely right. We see a lot of solicitation going on. What I want to say about is, and I go back to the gentrification subject and the conversation that we all started with about this podcast being about taking back our community. One of the issues is I go back to this simple term, finding value in your community. And what I mean by finding value in your community, for the people who are living in these communities and seeing this solicitation going on, and understanding that not only is it illegal, but it's also bringing down your property value and bringing down the value of your city. What are you doing to stop it? What I mean by that is, are you just dependent on a police officer to hope they pull up and do their job to stop it? Are you holding them to their feet to the fire and make sure you call them, and not only calling them, but keep calling them until it gets rectified? Are you reaching out to your public officials, your legislative branch, your senators, your governors, your mayors, your councilmen? Are you reaching out to them and speaking to them not only about eliminating solicitation, but also saying, okay, well, there are homeless people out here. What can we do, and what can the government do to rectify this issue so that people are not needing to solicitate outside on the streets? What is being done, and what are you doing to once again take back your community? And here's the point of the subject is, more needs to be done from the people who are living in these communities to take back your community. Rather than pointing out a problem, it's time to use your greatest asset, which is your time. Pick up that phone, write letters, and stay on top of these people. Because as I spoke on the previous podcast, and I'll say it again, if you do not keep these government elected officials who work for you to their word and make them do their job, then they're going to continue to just sit back, collect a paycheck, and do nothing. It's up to us as people and the people who live in these communities to respect and love our community. If we don't, then there is going to be people that come outside the community and find value into it and push you out of your community. It's time to fight back, take back your community, not just with your youth, but with all the things that you see that's wrong. The day is no longer here where we can sit back and be complacent about the issues that happen in our community. As Mr. Ryder spoke on, we're dealing with gentrifications in the communities, and they're pushing you out of your homes, out of your communities. They're making it more expensive for you to live into your communities. More expensive to a point you can't buy groceries in your community. You can't take you can't buy from restaurants in your community, where you don't recognize the community you grew up in anymore. But the question is, what are you going to do to stop it? If you don't like solicitation, you don't like the crimes, Mr. Ryder said it best. Call the police. Speak up about the youth and the problems they're having. When are we going to step up and do something about the problems in our community?
I wanted to say this too, Alan. When it comes to our dollars, our hard-earned dollars,
Absolutely.
and I'm just talking about for people in Wilmington, around the downtown area.
Mm-hmm.
If we do not start using our hard-earned dollars and actually supporting our local establishments,
Mm-hmm.
from your sneaker stores to your clothing stores,
Mm-hmm.
and do that continuously so that money can exchange hands throughout that community,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to taking your hard-earned dollars and go out to the mall and buy these $200 sneakers
Mm-hmm.
and things of that nature.
Right.
It's not going to work.
Absolutely, because like you said, the money has to circulate in that community in order for that community to continue to thrive and to continue to live and grow. So yeah, I agree.
So it's in the plans to bring that upper class back,
Mm-hmm.
just so that they can do just that.
But you spoke on something earlier, and I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but what you spoke on earlier was, once again, education and financial education, teaching our children the importance of supporting our community by circulating our money. But however, also teaching business owners to stop trying to get rich off of our own people. I'm not saying, oh, give them, you're my brother, so give me that brotherly discount, but make things affordable where I feel comfortable with coming to you. Don't make me feel like if I come to you and I'm trying to support you, you're trying to get rich off a bottle of water. So meaning, what I mean by getting rich off a bottle of water, I go into your store, you're trying to sell me $2 for a bottle of water, but I go across the street to an Asian store, they're trying to sell me $1 for that same bottle of water. You're trying to get rich and you expect that I buy the $2 bottle of water from you because we are the same race, because we live in the same neighborhood. I feel like we have to create responsible pricing on our items so that people feel comfortable with coming to you and not feeling like they're being beat or they feel like you're trying to be rich, get rich off of them. I think it's very important, but as you said, Mr. Ryder, it is also important for their finances to circulate into these communities, because just like your blood in your body, if your blood does not circulate in your body, what happens? You die.
Shut down.
It will shut down, you will die. What do you think is going to happen to your community if you keep going outside your community and spending your money? If it's not circulating to your community is getting poor. It will die. Your community will not thrive. So we need to start circulating. There's houses that are being sold for $30,000 in the communities. Buy these houses, get loans. Let's get loans. Let's build these houses up so the gentrification that's happening in our neighborhoods are being done by us, so that our neighborhoods are not changing and looking differently, but however are looking how we want them looking. We're improving our neighborhoods, and we're showing people that we find value in our neighborhood. So I agree 100% with Mr. Ryder is saying that yes, you need to circulate your dollars inside your neighborhood. Buy corner stores, buy homes, support that local sneaker store since you like sneakers. Support that local grocery store. Support them. Don't go stealing from them. Don't go sit on their steps and make it difficult for people to not want to go in that store. Respect and support these stores.
You know, I want to make this point too for people who get food stamps, for instance.
Absolutely.
You can go over Adams Ford one day and the prices be great.
Absolutely.
But no sooner than food stamps come out to people that live around in those areas that utilize that store, that grocery store,
right,
the prices change.
Right.
They go up. They get substantially higher for a pack of chicken.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think something also has to be done about that. If you're a person that gets $200 in food stamps, man, that ain't no groceries.
Absolutely. Not in modern times.
Then you got to go in there and because food stamps come out, the prices across the board is jacked up.
Right.
It's happening.
Yeah, I agree.
It's happening.
Right.
So I just disagree with that, man. I think that's terrible.
I agree, but you gotta understand too, we live in a capitalistic system where it's all about the almighty dollar and trying to advance the dollar. We do live in a capitalistic system, but within that, see, the thing is, and this is where education, I'm going to keep pushing the button on education. We need to educate ourselves to understand and learn how to maneuver within this capitalistic system. We talk about the rich and how they're getting richer and how they take advantage of things. We're not going to talk about President Donald Trump, but people had an issue with him maneuvering around the tax brackets and stuff. See, why a lot of these people in our current president and a lot of these billionaires are billionaires because they understand the capitalistic system and how to maneuver under this climate. So what I'm saying to you, my listeners, is it doesn't take nothing. It takes nothing for you to get online, to go to your local library and start reading up on the laws, reading up on the tax laws. And I'm not saying Google, and I'm not saying take advantage of anything. What I'm simply saying is understanding the capitalistic system and the rules of the game that you're playing in. That way, you have an understanding of what you can and can't do, and that you can improve your lifestyle and improve your neighborhood. So, where I agree with Mr. Ryder, yes, they do. I've seen it too. They do raise the prices. But once again, a solution to this issue is when are you going to hold your government officials' feet to the fire? Hold them to the fire where they create laws to say, listen, this is now against the law for you to raise these prices on these people only to take advantage of public assistance.
Yeah,
only take advantage of these people because that's what's happening. Poor people are being taken advantage of, and it's time for us as a community, as lower class, middle class, to stand together and fight. But understand something: until we create a chain, until we unite, nothing will change, and it will continue to go on. You will continue to be taken advantage of. Your neighborhoods will not thrive. Circulation, communication, and we have to create a chain. We have to make change, and we have to put the effort, but you have to find value inside of your community, inside yourself. And with that being said, Mr. Ryder, is anything you want to say before we close this episode of the podcast out?
I just want to say that Wilmington is a great place to live.
Absolutely.
I just need for people to actually dare to be different. Stop falling for the okie doke.
Absolutely.
Learn something. Love one another. Be respectful to the older folks within your community.
Absolutely.
And that's pretty much it, man. You know, they call me an old head from time to time, and you know, instead of calling me Mr. Andre or something like that, you know, hey, old head. And it's funny, and you know, I just think it's how you respond to a lot of that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because it's ways that you could talk to these young people, man. It's not impossible. It can be done.
Absolutely.
We just got to dare to be different, man. That's it, man.
Absolutely. And to close out, I'll just say this: respect is to be earned, not given. So a lot of times people expect that just because you are of a certain age, gender, that you're supposed to be automatically given respect. But however, what I will say to you is you have to understand respect is to be earned, not given. So I'm not telling you to go out here and kiss up to the youth, or to these people in the community, or to different people. But however, you need to show them a sense of respect, and show a sense of respect for yourself, so that in return, people will learn to respect you. It's all about how you carry yourself, how you speak to someone. Don't talk at someone, learn how to talk to someone. Try to understand where a person's perspective, where they're coming from, what's their plight, what they have going on in their life. Not everybody's life is the same. Not everybody's situation is the same. So try to be more understanding and less critical about someone's situation and the things they're going through. Respect is to be earned, not given.
Yes.
Also, what I would say to you is it's time for us to fight back. Now, this is on episode 2 of the podcast, and we'll go more into support and how we need to support each other and support our communities. But within this episode, I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you, Mr. Ryder, for your time, for coming on and giving us your education, educating our guests, educating me on the issues not only that deal with drugs, but also the issues that deal with our community and the gentrification that's going on in the community, and the ways we need to work to fight back to gain our community. I appreciate your expertise. I appreciate your time and for your knowledge that you bestowed upon all of us and my listeners. With that being said, I want to thank you for listening to the Ordinary People Podcast. As always, I encourage you to like, share, subscribe to my page on YouTube, Alan the Great on YouTube. Subscribe to my page so we can promote and get this podcast on a higher platform. We're still working to get on Google and the iTunes store. I apologize for the inconvenience. We're not getting there yet, but we'll be there soon. I want to thank y'all once again for your time, for listening to the Ordinary People Podcast, where we talk to ordinary people with extraordinary stories. I am your host, Alan the Great, and I want to say to you, peace.
I'm Andre, and we're out.